Mary Gray. I'm the director of the Ohio Arts Council's Rife Gallery, and on behalf of our board, the staff, and the entire Rife Gallery team, welcome. I'd like to introduce you to our guest artist today. This is our second artist talk in a series of 8 during the run of our biennial juried exhibition. We will be hearing from David Griesmeyer today. A native of Ohio, David worked for 13 years gaining expertise in fabrication as a representative for a medical company, repairing and fabricating surgical instruments. I thought you were in sales. His true passion has always been art. He expresses his creativity through pen and ink, acrylic paints, and metal sculpture. In 2013, he left the medical field and struck out to build a business from the ground up that makes the most of not only his skills, but also his talent. With a passion for bringing his creative vision to life, David draws inspiration from the beauty and innocence in life. David lives and works in the Connellsville, Ohio. Please welcome David Griesmeyer.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. This is a pleasure to be able to speak with you guys. I am humbled when people show any affection for the work that we do, for the work that I've been able to create. As Mary said, I was in the medical field, and we did sales. We did sales, but we wore many hats. Having had so much background with the fabrication and working on surgical, it was very close to art. A doctor wanted to see a surgical instrument look like this, and he would say to me, please make me the surgical instrument, and it has to be perfect under a microscope of 400 times. So I would make that surgical instrument for him. Having a love for fabrication, for making things, has really brought me to the area where I am now. But just a small little history of why I even left the medical field to pursue art entirely. Working for the medical field for so many years, I remember driving to a hospital. I was driving to the hospital, but I remember coming to a red light. And I stopped at this red light and looked over to my left, and I saw a vacant strip mall with nobody in it. Not a car parked in front. It was just lights on with nothing inside. At that very moment, I had this feeling, this impression, a vision of people working inside this vacant strip mall. I saw them working. I saw them cutting metal. I saw them grinding and welding. I saw all these things happening, and I immediately called my wife. And I said, Emily, I think it's time for us to start a metal fabrication business. She was perplexed. We are in the height of our career. We had hospitals, nurses and doctors calling us. I was teaching seminars on how to properly use surgical instruments. And I decided to completely change gears. So what happened was this. The very next day I started collecting metal fabrication equipment. I'm getting to the point with the sculptures, because all this was leading up to that moment of realizing that art is what I wanted to do. So what happened was this. I told my wife I want to start a metal fabrication business. I started buying welders, metal benders, cutters, grinders, everything you can imagine, and not pursue it yet. About 5 years passed. Still, I worked for a medical company, and a friend of mine up here in Ohio said to me once, he said, David, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I said, honestly, I want to start a metal fabrication business. So you need to move back up to Ohio. See, I was living in Panama City, Florida at the time. I, at that point, was thinking, what am I going to do up in Ohio? The oil and gas is really good. A lot of different things are happening with industry up in that area. And at that point, I said, you know what? I think it's time. I think it's time, and I told my company that I was leaving. I was scared. But what I decided to do was I decided to take my friend's advice, and I decided to learn how to really weld. And so I enrolled at this career center down in Marietta. Beautiful career center called the Washington County Career Center. I enrolled there, and I told the people what I was doing. I told them I was going to start a metal fabrication business, and they laughed at me. Not everybody, but just a few of them, because I know they've heard it from other people before. Oh, you're going to start a business. But I was determined. It was absolutely everything I was going to do. But while I started practicing the welds, something happened. There's this torch that they use for welding. It's called a TIG welder. A TIG welder is it's called a tungsten inert gas welder. It requires you to use one hand holding the torch, another hand holding a metal fill rod, and a foot pedal. And the foot pedal controls the heat. Just like a sewing machine. When you're pushing on the foot pedal for a sewing machine, when you push harder, the fabric moves quicker through the sewing machine. The needle moves faster. So you can control how fast you're able to sew by the pressure of the foot pedal. The same thing with this welder. When you push on the foot pedal, there's more heat. It comes out, you're able to go so much faster. But what happened was when I was practicing using this welder, the metal, when I let off the foot pedal, the metal solidified vertically. I said, oh my goodness, it was an epiphany. I said, I don't have to stay flat. And at that very moment, what I did was I made a little hand coming out of the metal. A little hand, only about 1.5 inches wide. And then right after that, you'll see as it scrolls through, there's a picture up here of a man welding. That was the very first sculpture I ever made, a week after picking up the TIG welder for the very first time. So what happened was this. I started welding in a circle, in the shape of a foot. And I welded in a circle, kept going up, almost like a 3D printer. I started going up higher and higher and higher, just like this sculpture here. This sculpture on the table was one metal drop liquefied in a circle, starting from the toe. One metal drop all the way up to the head. This sculpture is made out of steel, a very strong metal. This isn't made out of casting or a mold. It's the original piece. Think about the sculptures that I make. Every single thing I make is 100% original. But we started doing it out of steel. And then we started doing it out of stainless. And see, something stood out to me as I was making these sculptures. That there's a tremendous opportunity to be able to make things in any fashion, any form. If we mess up in a little area or it's not exactly what the customer wants, at that moment we can just erase it, adding more heat. The metal liquefies and falls away, just like an eraser drawing. You can erase it and it falls away. Start over. So these sculptures, they're, I want to say, more of a feeling that I have. There's a man in Dieter F. Uchtdorf. He's one of the presidents of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He taught this, he shared a story one day. This is the story I want to share. He talked about one day how in the 60s a group of scientists were evaluating 4-year-old children. They wanted to look at children and they wanted to see their propensity for patience. One of the scientists, what they did was they took these children, they put them in a room, and while they put them in the room, they put on a plate in front of these children a marshmallow. They told the children, you have the ability to eat one marshmallow, and nothing will happen. You can have it. But if you wait 2 hours, or 1 hour, you can have 2 marshmallows. The majority of the children ate the marshmallows immediately. as any 4-year-old would. And then others waited maybe a few more minutes, trying to show their patience. But what happened was, they would eat it, but then what they found out was the kids, the children, that waited the whole hour for that marshmallow, they had a goal. They understood what it took to make something happen. Right now, I'm making sculptures. These sculptures are not a sculpture made out of clay, where I can do the form and then there's other processes that happen to it. But upon making the sculpture, it requires having the image completely to the end and understanding every process to get to the very final completed piece. Up here, you'll see the tree right behind me. This is what's here in the gallery at the moment. This tree took 7 months. 7 months to make. One metal drop at a time, starting from the roots, and going around in a circle all the way up. The whole process, it takes time. But now understanding that it's the patience that is required to make these sculptures, and never losing focus of where I want to be when the piece is completed. Now, I love art. I had no idea that the art that we were going to do was going to be so influential to the community that I'm in. I love watching the children as they come in. We have school buses and tour buses coming in where children get to sit there and watch and participate in making the sculptures. For me, I have a lot of emotion when I make these sculptures. Sure, there's emotion behind it. One of the nice things is I've been blessed to have a crazy photographic memory where I remember everything I've ever seen. And so being able to pull from everything I've ever seen and then rotate it in my head, replay it like a video, back and forth in my mind. Then to being able to take those images, those things that we're creating. I had with me, coming up here, I wanted to show off another sculpture that is in the process. It's a little larger, so we opted to not bring it inside, but it's a beautiful dragonfly. Unlike the one I have in the scrolling pictures behind me, but the dragonfly I'm working on right now is made entirely out of stainless steel. It's the first of its kind. The wings are so delicate. The legs are extremely delicate. But because of the strength of the stainless steel, it holds up the weight of this dragonfly perched on a little branch. But in the process of making this sculpture, we thought, how can we make this sculpture so much more? And so, talking with my guys, and since I own a metal fabrication business, it's not just a studio where I'm making art all day long. It's in fact a welding company where I have employees who are fabricating, making beautiful pieces of furniture for high-end hotels and resorts. They're also assisting us with making parts and things for industry all around. But while all those guys are working, I'm sitting at my table making the art. And I love it. I love to be able to see and watch them all fabricating, but to be able to create, doing it all in one location. One nice thing about the dragonfly that I'm working on right now is that I wanted it to have beautiful glass marbles for the eyes. But not just one big glass ball. I wanted it to have hundreds and hundreds of marbles encompassing the eye. But the challenge of doing that is you're working with stainless steel. Stainless steel is one of the hardest metals to weld. And yet now we're making sculptures out of them. What we decided to do with the eyes, just like on a diamond ring, you have settings that hold that diamond in place. So we had to create and come up with an idea to create settings that would hold every single marble. And I said to several of my employees, I said, this is like playing the hardest game of Operation. If you're familiar with that old game where you had to reach in with your tweezers and try to pull out the funny bone or something out of the toy. If you touch the sides, the buzzer would go off. But while making this sculpture, you have electricity, a tremendous amount of electricity, so much electricity that it's pinpointing, liquefying the metal in very small spots. So when you have this much electricity going through, what's happening is if you touch something that's closer than the point that you're trying to electrify, the electricity will go to that point first. So trying to reach in these settings with a tungsten electrode deep inside, it was like playing that game of Operation. Because if I touched one of the legs of this setting, the whole entire leg would evaporate. It would turn into a liquid ball and just fall out. And so to do this, we've been playing around with new ways of welding. Now I am seeing that our playing around with the new ways of welding is inspiring. I've hired many people, but I have instructors from welding schools who work for me. I have incredible talented people. And yet, as we're doing this process of welding to make these sculptures, I have men who have been welding for 26, 30 years, welding on the pipelines, who have said to me, this is the hardest thing we've ever experienced. And to be able to do this with you, to participate in, learning this welding technique, because it allows you to treat the metal so differently. And I want to explain this, because for people who don't really know a whole lot about welding, when you take a solid form of metal and you add heat to it, it wants to turn into a liquid state. And the liquid state is what you are having to play with. You have to treat the metal not as a solid, but as a liquid. Upon treating the metal as a liquid, you have everything you have to worry about. You have to worry about gravity, because gravity wants to pull liquid out. If you ever heat up an ice cube, how easy is it to control where the water goes from the ice cube? It wants to go down and fall to the ground, which often happens when we're welding. Often this is what's going on, is when we're adding little by little the electricity to the metal, we have to heat it up to a certain point of its liquidity before it wants to fall away. My wife said to me, she said, David, watching with my welding hood on, and she does that sometimes, she'll stand there and she'll watch as I'm welding. She says, it is amazing. It doesn't look like you're welding. It looks like you are painting with lava. Painting with something so bright, so ferocious, that if you were to touch it, it would burn you. Yet, to watch it as the liquid flows. I get passionate about this because I see the tremendous capabilities of treating the liquid metal. But because we're treating the metal not as a solid, we treat it as a liquid. We treat metal like a paint. And I tell people, I am painting the metal vertically. If you look closely at these sculptures here, starting at the bottom, just starting from the bottom, painting vertically every metal drop. Wanting to know exactly where I want a piece. Knowing, for instance, right here, a lap around the clavicle, or around the small of her back, or her shoulder blades. You can see the muscles in her neck as it's straining. But knowing how to put the liquid metal in every spot from the very beginning. This sculpture very specifically, when I started her, I got all the way up to her shoulders. And I said to myself, oh my, I actually don't like it. So I took out what's called a plasma cutter. And with the plasma cutter, I just cut her entirely in half. And put that on the ground. So now I have this bust of the other part of her. And I started over again. Treating this more like a sketch. If I don't like something, I erase it. I start over again. That's the nice part about this. Oftentimes, it's awfully difficult to do that with a bronze sculpture. When you do a bronze sculpture, in the process, if it's not 100% exactly the way you want it out of clay, it's pretty hard to fix those things after it's been cast. But the nice thing about this technique in making the sculptures is that we're now treating the metal individually, like clay, building one little piece at a time. The nice thing is, there's so many opportunities with sculpture like this. Bringing tourism, bringing other things into our little area of McConnellsville. But the art for myself I see that it has tremendous potential. Potential for bringing tourism, potential for education. I love art. For me, to be able to create these things, to be able to make a sculpture, yet not only make a sculpture, but to create jobs. Because as we make a sculpture, I get to hire more people and bring more people on. And especially in a town where I live, where there's very few jobs. It's beautiful to be able to use this art and the technique and the capabilities of doing so much for our community. I think that's the biggest part, is for me as an artist. I've never been much of an artist. Sure, I can make things, but I don't know about art history. I never went to an art class. I never had art in college. I never had art in these areas. And so for me, art is so much more, because I stumbled upon it in my 30s. Yes, I used to always draw pictures. I drew pictures. My dad would tell me at church on Sunday, he would say, "Shut up and draw," because that's how he kept us quiet. So I love to draw, but it was always just for me. I never put any art in any gallery. I never did those things trying to further my art career. It wasn't until recently that I've realized that we have something tremendous here, and something beautiful and simple. For me, I have sculptures of my children. I have sculptures. Recently, I was asked to some friends who were a part of the school board in Morgan County. They approached me. They said, "David, we have a couple that is leaving, and we wanted to honor them." I knew this couple because I worked with one of them on creating the Morgan County Community Arts. As we worked with that, with Melanie Baldwin and others, what happened was, as we created the MCCA, I developed a tremendous relationship with him. As he left, they said, "David, would you be willing to make something?" Well, I wanted, they said to me at first, "Will you just make a big M?" I said, "Oh my goodness. I don't feel that making them just an M for a grad or retirement would be worth it." And so here, as you'll see scrolling through, there'll be a picture of a child, a little girl reading a book. It'll scroll through eventually. But I made a sculpture of this little girl reading a book, because they meant so much more to me than just a big letter M. And I think that's the thing, is as we can use the things that we are given, the talents that we have, utilize our patience to make something truly happen. Too many people today are very, they're very much about the immediacy, the "I want it now," the entitlement. You'll see, this is the sculpture that we made. Entirely out of stainless steel. The thing is, for me, anything that's of value and of worth, it's going to take time to create. It's going to take time. Real effort. For me personally, when I look at art, I think about, well, what is the true effort that goes in behind it? What is the true thought process? Is it more than just a meaning? And what can you do with it? I love art. I'm working on a very large art project of very large sculptures. You'll see some of them here with me behind me, of fish and other things. Therefore, tourism experiences that I'm trying to create in Athens. I'm working with the Mayor Patterson down in Athens, and County Commissioner Chris Schneal. Tremendous people who are trying to see tremendous things happen in that area. But the big part is, how can we create sculptures? Make them beautiful, make them lasting, making them a legacy for who we are. For me, I care about what my legacy is. I have 4 children, or excuse me, 4 daughters and a son. My son would be upset if I didn't mention that. They are my legacy. I was taught at a young age that no amount of success outside of the home can compensate for failure within. I truly believe that with all my heart. So how can I create something that becomes a legacy for my children, for others, That they can say, I was a part of that. Art is that. Art has a way of inspiring people. Art has a way of moving people. I've told this story many times before. I've driven to Los Angeles many times. And every time I've gone, I would see the big giant billboards that would say, turn here to the world's largest rubber band ball, or to the biggest cowboy. Or I would get off the interstates to go see those things. For me, art is a driving factor for a lot of people. They want to see beautiful things. I want to be a part of that. I want to create things that are legacies, things that will mean and matter to others, and that my children, my family will be proud of. That's what I wanted to share. I'll leave this time up now for any questions or anything else, if any of you guys have any. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say that you have just given a beautiful talk.
Thank you.
And I love everything you said, and I wish that every art teacher could hear, and not only your passion, but you had so many wonderful points about focus and persistence and goals. And, it's so hard for us to help children understand that they can fail,
Yes.
and but they can learn from that
Yes.
and move forward. There's just so many things I love about what you said, and I feel that I was inspired today at my desk to come over and
Thank
be
you.
here.
Thank you.
And so I just feel that this presentation was just excellent.
Thank you very much.
And your heart and passion shows through. So congratulations on that. And you've moved me. So I want to go back to my own work and feel that I can move forward.
There's something else. Regardless the age that we are, we can always change.
That's exactly.
We can always do something different. I gave up in the height of my medical career, not knowing, but just trusting. For me, trusting God, that He is guiding me to be somewhere very different and to do something big. We all have that potential. Sometimes we are in those jobs that we just feel like we can't get away from. Sometimes we're in those situations, whether it be abusive relationships or addictions or other things that we are struggling with. But we all have the potential.
We all have a choice, don't we?
Yes.
We can make that choice. That's a great message.
Thank you.
And in your work, when I think of metal and heaviness, but your work has a delicacy, a sensitivity that you've achieved with a material that I would not expect to achieve. And I'm just loving that fact, this delicate, sensitive work. And I can see because it comes from you.
Thank you.
And I have one question, technical.
Sure.
You have to build, what I see in one of your slides, you have to build an armature.
To some degree. To some degree. To give me a little bit of, because have you ever seen a mud dauber wasp?
Mm-hmm.
The mud dauber wasp will build its little shell around its eggs, one little bit of mud at a time. But that little armature, it allows us to keep structure from one spot to the next, going back and forth.
Okay.
And it's really quite fascinating. In fact, I invite anybody to come down to our shop just to watch. And we have had tour buses of people. In fact, we had our first women's welding night over there. And we had all these women. The oldest one she was 73. She said, "I'm really frustrated. My husband never let me weld when he was alive, so now I'm here." the opportunity that was given to her, but she said, it's just amazing to watch. But obviously, it's dangerous. You're dealing with liquid metal.
Yes.
And when the liquid metal does fall away, you want to make sure you're not sitting. Or you catch metal balls all, on your lap, and you see some of my guys, jump up dancing every so often. But the challenge has, I want to say, has more to do with the patience. Are you going to be focused long enough to make it happen? And I think that's what happened here, is that we figured. And I think I would equivocate, can't even say the word, equate, okay, sure, to this sculpture technique is pointillism. Because pointillism is one dot at a time, with seeing the big picture in mind. It's not something you can do overnight. It takes time.
Any other questions?
So I was a little late to the
Sure.
talks. I just caught that you were in the medical field and then you stopped to open this foundry. Is that
Yes.
basic? How long ago was that? How long have you been in production?
I would say about 3 years.
Oh, really? That's all? Wow.
In fact, I
Seems
only
like
started
you've
making these
accomplished a lot.
sculptures 3 years ago.
And so of the business that you're running, it sounds like you have a couple public art. You were talking about Athens, Ohio, where this fish and this. So
Yes.
those are public art commissions from the city
Well,
of Athens? Or?
Great question. I'm currently working on a larger project called the Corridor of Art. We're making giant sculptures that we'll be putting out on the Muskingum River between Zanesville all the way down to Marietta. But we'll also be putting giant sculptures from Athens all the way to Caldwell. And so I'm working with the civic leaders to have places for these sculptures. And we're including students from their high schools and the colleges to come participate and make these sculptures with us.
All at your foundry, they're going to.
That's correct.
So all the sculptures will be produced.
That's correct.
In your foundry. Wow.
Yes.
Cool.
And so for right now, we are working on the designs for a 35-foot tall white-tailed buck that we're looking to put in Malta, Ohio.
Cool.
You know,
And you came up with this vision, and now you're finding how's that being funded?
that's a great question. I have, and like you said, back with my marketing and my sales, is that I understand the projects that I'm working on are legacy projects. I used to live in Tifton, Georgia. I haven't a whole lot of reason for going back to Tifton, Georgia. I have no family there. But I've gone back because I helped paint a section of a mural on the side of a building when I was in grade school. I wanted to show my children that part of the mural that I made. Now imagine, you have children who help participate in making giant sculptures, which are a big part of tourism. Getting people out of Columbus to go down in the southeastern region of Ohio, down to Marietta, down to Athens, down to these areas. And the children that came in on their school bus, they had fun. They got to make a scale for a fish, for the giant sculpture that we're doing of a school of fish. We're doing a school of fish that's 90 foot long, 20 foot up in the air. The first fish is made. We're already working on the second. We have more fish that we're already in production making. And the children are coming and cutting out a scale. And then we attach the scale, but their name's written on the back. They then say, I helped make that fish. And they bring their children back to Southeast Ohio. The whole point is, you get children involved. The education part of it. They realize they don't have to leave Ohio to have this experience. They can stay in Ohio, and they can be in a rural part of southeastern Ohio, and yet it's still available to them. They don't have to go to Los Angeles. They don't have to go to Chicago or New York. They can stay in Ohio and help flourish the towns that seem to be failing, or the kids are leaving because they don't have anything. That's what I hear often. But now they have a reason to stay. They can create. Creating it's what everybody wants to do.
Yeah.
Did you get what you I think you were looking more for the funding part.
Oh, sorry.
Just curious.
Oh, so on the funding part,
Yeah.
that's a great question. Sorry, sometimes.
No, that's okay. And just before you go to that,
Yeah.
to kind of echo the passion that's coming across, that would help sell these things pretty well.
Absolutely.
I mean, you just made a very impassioned reasoning for like the connection of community to public art, and then the kids making
Exactly.
these things.
And so I've reached out to CEOs and presidents of companies, to civic leaders for fundings, grants that could be put up, companies that want to donate parts, metal poles or concrete. We have several companies that have already said that they would be willing to donate for select sculptures, that they want to have their part in it all. And see, that's them putting their name on it as well. And so you have companies that are putting their legacy part of it, that this is something we were able to be a part of, to have the largest outdoor art gallery in Southeast Ohio with the sculptures that we're all making. But that's a great question. And
That's
already started
awesome.
pursuing it.
And to commend you for taking on the role of finding a way for this to get done. You know, a lot of artists take advantages of the opportunities that they have, and you're creating it for yourself and for all of your employees.
I've said to my employees often, and to the people I've talked with, I don't care if my name is attached. I mean, I gave up a career. I gave up a lot of money in that area because money it's not the most important thing in my life. The most important thing is,
Spoken like a true artist.
Yeah.
right? But you need money. But you need money to be able to move these things forward. And I'm not ignorant in that fact. And so we will go and talk to those people who are willing to be a part of the bigger project, to be a part of the bigger plan.
Okay, one more funding question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's your goal, and how close are you to that,
Okay.
percentage-wise, maybe, if not specific numbers?
Not specific numbers, but for specific sculptures, we are on target for those pieces. But my goal is to see 40 sculptures every 5 miles down the Muskingum River. A big, beautiful sculpture. I've designed them already of big geese landing in a field.
Like a commission.
Yes, yes.
And when, to build on this gentleman.
Nancy, there was one other question.
Oh, sure.
Can we do? Are you good? Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure everybody got there.
Sure.
Yes, I just want to know, when you first saw that strip mall,
Yes,
and you saw the potential of using it,
yes.
how did you buy it? Did you?
No. The only thing that happened after that was I started to collect
Okay.
and started to research and read books on metal fabrication, on how to use the grinders, how to use the welders. But then it was my friend who said, well, you should probably go to welding school. And I did that, and it was probably the best experience I could have had. Not everybody, and I know that, from our governor's office to a lot of the locals, municipalities, they understand that trade jobs are essential. Not everybody's going to go and get a college degree, but this was an opportunity that I took, that going to that welding school, and so much has bloomed and blossomed from it. Since then, just in the process of us trying to be creative, I said to my employees, I said, you know what? I want to put color on my sculptures. And I'm going to make big sculptures. And so what happened was I said, let's build an oven. So we built one of the largest infrared powder coating batch ovens in Southeast Ohio. We're just going to build it for the sculptures. But now we have industry sending us all their products that they want powder coated. And so now I'm having to set up that as a separate business, and it is going crazy, but we have that ability with the sculptures. Are there any other questions?
Do you ever make molds of I've never seen something built with a bead from a weld. It blew my mind. When I sat down, it was the first thing you said. It blew my mind.
Right.
And it still kind of is. So would you ever consider making a mold of this, because this is a one of a kind, and you could presumably cast this in any number of metals. Have you done that before? Have you gotten?
No. However, for instance, right now in my studio, we are building a foundry, so we can pour bronze. But we also want to incorporate other medias. For instance, in the process of doing all this, I've been researching everything up to glass blowing. So that, like for instance, I was talking to a gallery in Manhattan just last week. They are blown away. They are like, David, we would love to have some of your pieces right here in the center of Manhattan. I told her about a piece that I've designed and I'm about to get started on making. And just like the tree that is here in the gallery now, we're about to make a king-size bed. Instead of having 4 posts, there's going to be 4 trees. And the canopy over the bed is going to be blown glass leaves. The whole point is create beautiful things. Create things that you can be proud of. Things that, I mean, yes, there's artists that are very good at what they do, but not all of it is something I want to do. I want to create beautiful things that definitely my children will be like, definitely that was my dad. And that's what he created. But yeah, absolutely. Having the ability to make these things. I've thought about, what if we casted this here?
Yeah.
We could do that. Yes, we could put a silicone mold around it and make the shell, and then cast it out of this, make the slurry and everything else. We could do that. We haven't yet,
Yeah.
because I also believe line upon line, precept upon precept. You can only you can only go as fast as you can walk. I mean, you want to go at such a pace that is done correctly. And like I said, we've only been in business for about 3 years now. And in that 3-year period, the art is just blowing up. And to create the art in Morgan County, it's tremendous. And to see the people there, to be a part of it, it's tremendous. Anything else?
Anybody else?
Yeah. David, I got a question.
Yes.
So this sculpture here,
Yes.
everything that you see is all made from rods,
Yes. This
except for that?
This wire right here is an actual premium welding rod. They always coat copper around steel. And the reason they do it is because copper conducts electricity better than steel because it doesn't have any impurity, as much impurities in it. So they coat welding wire with copper. And then once you weld it, the copper flows into the steel and it becomes a permanent part of the steel sculpture. This is entirely made out of these wires, one metal drop at a time. That's why it was welded directly in to the base of the sculpture. You can see the color changing as it got closer to the body because the copper started to liquefy inside. That's a great question.
And is there an armature
There's not. This is
framework? It's just all solid
No, this
drops of,
this is hollow.
oh, it's hollow.
This is hollow.
Okay.
But here you'll see a little bit of the framework.
Oh,
Yet that was to give me kind of a space to go between as we worked the way up.
But you tack that framework on, like it's not here, it's not in, so here are you tacking the framework onto the sculpture
Yes.
there, you put the framework up as you go, it's not
That's
like
correct.
the whole thing sitting there. And you
Correct.
go from-
It just, you do the framework as you go. And so that really hasn't, you have to understand spatial awareness, where that arm's going to be, what's the proper dimensions from the shoulder to the elbow, what is the back going to look like as it's bent in a posture. My sister-in-law, she critiqued me on this sculpture. She said, David, it's not a ballerina. Ballerinas don't wear that type of dress, and they don't have their hands out like this. And she said, you can call it a contemporary dancer. I said, that's fine. I'll take a contemporary dancer. But it was fun as I made this. In fact, this sculpture right here was the very second sculpture I ever made in my whole entire life.
Have you found other people doing this way since you started doing it?
Yeah, there's probably about 3 other people that I know of in the United States.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is very different.
Yeah.
And the scale, like for instance, you'll see this turtle right here is 250 pounds. It's life size. That tree was just something fun. My
I
guys,
love that tree.
yeah, me too. We made it for a interior design project. They wanted, stools around inside this one visitor center. So we made that for the visitor center. But you'll see there's a sculpture here of a man and woman sitting on a tree stump. That's passed through several times, but that is one of the very first life-size sculptures made entirely out of stainless steel. One metal drop at a time. It's 2,000 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And Morgan County is the first in the country to have a sculpture like that. But anything
Any
else?
other questions for David? David, I think there's more than a handful of people that would love to come down and visit you in your studio.
Absolutely.
The good news about today's presentation is that it will live on Facebook, and you'll be able to review it yourselves, share it with other people, and thank you from the
Thank you
bottom of
very
our
much.
hearts for today. Thanks so much, David.